right, guys, welcome to the Imperfect Together podcast with Zach and Chris. Chris is not here today because he had to go to the bathroom. And so he is in the bathroom, and he will be there for the remaining of this podcast. So just probably a lot of poop is what's going on in that bathroom. But we do have Tim Goodman, who is very smart and knows a lot about everything. And you're a helicopter pilot, aren't you?
Almost.
Yeah, he's close. He does a lot of things. I don't even know exactly what you do. What exactly do you do for a living?
Well, at this point, it could be qualified in several forms. Working through some leadership development, leadership coaching.
You know what? Do you know who else says that? I have a friend. I have a friend that says, I ask what his parents do because his parents are very wealthy, and he goes, "Oh yeah, you know," and he always kind of beats around the bush. I swear, I think his family's in the mafia, like. And so when people say, there's a lot of things, I was like, yeah, you're into something fishy. Yeah. The producer GL's like, yeah, they're doing something fishy. They're doing something weird. And so what are you doing? Laundering money? What are you doing?
Well, I wash clothes, but not laundering, not money. Yeah.
He's not laundering money. He's a good guy, guys. Goodman is his last name. Good man. I have a question for you, Tim. Who is the most influential person or persons in your life growing up?
Probably growing up would have been my dad.
Your dad?
He was, and still is, a pastor. Has been at that same church for 52 years.
Jeez.
And has, from my earliest memories, has always been the same.
Yeah.
So probably my dad.
All right. That's cool. Mine growing up in high school was Bam Margera. Do you know who Bam Margera is?
No.
I figured you wouldn't know because of the gray hair. Bam Margera was a skateboarder, and he was on a show that he hurt himself a lot. It was like Jack that show.
Yes.
But actually, whenever I was in high school, I think it was my 11th grade year, we had to write like college papers, and then one of the questions was, who is the most influential person in your life? And I wrote a 3-page paper about Bam Margera. I mean, I look back at it now, I'm just like, man, I really wish I could find that paper, just because.
It'd be worth something.
Yeah, it'd be worth something. Be very, and that was, I think it was before I found Jesus or anything like that. So, but that was my, whatever. Now, if you would tell me who's the most influential, I would say, my mentors, Ray, Jamie, Greg, who I mentioned a few times. I've even put my wife in there now, from what happened with all this.
Yes.
I never doubted her before but her faith through all of this, I mean,
well,
I can't mess that up now.
Yeah. Well, as you and I discussed earlier, actually today, the fact that she was such a true believer in not just God, but belief in what He had promised.
Yeah.
This area for sure, and in an even broader spectrum of area, knows her, knows you, knows your story.
Yeah.
And it's because of that. And that's one of the things that we find as influence and influencers. Yeah. It's not just about what we can do to those people very close to us, but it's about changing and impacting the world around us. And one of the things that your story and your wife's faith, belief, stance, and her being solid in that has impacted and influenced a broad range of people. Yeah. Many that you won't even know. Yeah. But you have reached them.
I have friends that, haven't been to church in ever, I actually got a call from a guy named Brian last Sunday. and we were talking, and he was one of those kids that I hung out with a lot, during my party phase. And anyways, we were talking. We're always close friends. Every time we see each other, we talk and we hang out, and it's like we never, I don't know. But he's an awesome guy. But he was telling me, so his best friend, his name is Mark, and he was telling me one day, whenever all this was going down, that he prayed for the first time in a long time about me. And he said, I was praying in the shower, so, I was naked. And I was like, oh, okay. I was like, all right, Brian.
You got to have those friends.
I was like, and then anyways, but Mark called him right after he got out of the shower. And Mark goes, hey, I haven't been to church in a long time, and I don't really know how to pray for this, but I think, I prayed for Zach. And Brian was like, that's crazy. I prayed for him too, and it's just like, it's stuff like, but like I hear stories about that all the time, about my situation, which is very humbling and very thankful and very, happy, but there's still a lot to unpack there, know. But yeah, and that's a topic for another podcast. But I do have another question. So you were saying that your dad is the most influential person in your life. What is the most memorable learning experience you have learned from your dad?
Well, that'd be a lot to unpack. For several years, he and I worked in the same field. I was pastoring and he was pastoring, and so I learned a lot. We would sit and have conversations. So a lot of questions that I was able to ask him in that.
Yeah.
Probably one of the lessons that I learned, and it's one that we'll be talking about on Wednesday night, is something you see becomes something you learn. And we were at a party at a friend's house, and we were supposed to be home, my brother and I, around 10. I don't remember the times. And obviously we missed that because I look up and Dad has pulled up in the car, and he doesn't do anything except roll the window down and look at us. Well, we knew it was time to go home. So that's a learning experience. It was even calm, even quiet, even just showing up, looking at us from the car. We knew, and I learned that sometimes the impact of seeing, the impact of just authority, is something is established and doesn't have to be exerted.
Yeah.
And I know that probably doesn't answer the question exactly the way that you might have expected, but there was no exchange other than a look.
Yeah.
And it was very powerful.
Yeah.
And I still remember it like it was yesterday.
Yeah. 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 I get that. I've mentioned this quite a few times during this podcast, but have you watched The Chosen?
I have not.
You have not? You should watch it. Jesus has a lot of looks,
Right.
He talks, but it's very little, and but his facial expressions through it all explains a lot, And so whenever you were saying that, it was like, but for instance, when he was like, "Hey, Simon Peter, throw that for a catch," and he's like, "Oh, I've been fishing all day, blah 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 blah. The Romans are gonna kill me because of all the taxes and all this stuff." And he's like, "Oh, I'll just do it anyways." He throws it out there, he catches all the fish, and you just see Jesus is smiling and just so laughing, at them. And so there's stuff like that where you're just but anyways, to get back on track, for me, the most memorable experience, there's a lot of them, even with those three guys that have mentored me, but now, the stage of life that I'm in right now, my wife, I don't know, what she did, and I know that we talked about it, but I don't think I would be that strong. You know what I'm saying? But I also have not been where she's been,
Right.
So I don't know how I would respond to it, but just the way, I only read up to, when things got really hairy with me. And then I was like, I probably should stop, and so, but what I have read, it's been very like this girl is faithful through it all. Like, I have never seen someone with so much faith. Yeah. There's only one person that I could think of that's not in the Bible, and it's this guy named Will Wyatt that had a lot of faith, like that just vibrated throughout everything. And but my wife, like I can't explain like I don't know. It's just crazy to me. But what was I gonna say? All right. So when I say what it means to learn from Jesus, what comes to mind?
When we talk about, I feel like when we talk about learning from Jesus, what I've always been told, and as you said, the gray hair gives away a lot of my experience, but a lot of what has been propagated and told is you have to learn what the Bible says, learn what the verses mean, learn how to say them, repeat them, and then learn those lessons that are in the Bible. And that's such a big and nebulous concept that I'm not sure it's really something that can be captured so simply as those, I'm going to say those people, but the people that with great intention wanted me to learn.
Yeah.
What I find about learning from Jesus is more of what he did, the things that he shared with Peter, James, and John, with the other disciples, the things that he would go about doing. Because it wasn't always there. Consider just feeding the 5,000. That wasn't a lesson on fish fries and biscuit making. It was about taking what you had, letting him utilize it in whatever manner that was, and see good results.
Yeah.
It wasn't on the lesson where he told them over and over, he said, I am God's son. I am deity in so many words. But until they saw him on the Mount of Transfiguration, in Mark chapter 9, it says where Elijah and Moses appeared and they stood beside him and there was a recognition. So they saw what he did. That wasn't even a lesson. That was just what he was doing.
Yeah.
In all of the things he took a nap on a boat. He would touch lepers that no one would do during those days. Yeah. He gave, he would heal sick people,
blind people,
bring dead people back to life. All of these things that he did, and these guys just watched. And so the lessons that Jesus taught, and if you consider, especially feeding the 5,000, that's where we go back so often to a lot of what Jesus did. Jesus fed 5,000 men, so probably 15,000 people total or more, but he fed these people. Well, the disciples, Peter, James, and John, they weren't sitting and listening to what he was doing because they were trying to figure out logistics of where these people are going to stay, how they're going to get home. It's going to get dark. They're trying to figure out the path. All of these things, maybe drawing up the, something for the fire marshal. So all that would be kosher with the city. But they were not hearing as much as they were watching. And I think that correlates into our life or flows into our life. And people who see Catherine, for example, they may have heard her say, all these Young Life kids may have heard her say, belief in God, faith in God. And those were terms until they saw her do it. That lesson was something that didn't maybe stick as deeply with these disciples. Jesus told them, hey, tear down the temple, I'll rebuild it in 3 days. They didn't understand it. When they saw him resurrected, it stuck. Those are the things that I think when we really dig in, that's what comes to mind when learning from Jesus.
And even when he was doing all the healing and doing all that stuff, like, he didn't do any of that stuff without his Father, like the connection that he had with him. Like, he didn't do anything that was not of the world, but of, you think of the temptation, and he was like, no, devil, get out of here. No, devil, get out of here. No,
Right.
devil, get out of here. So, I don't know. There's something I want to read. It's in Matthew 11:28, and it says, "Come to me, all of you who are tired from carrying your heavy loads, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke and put it on you." Now, when I say yoke, Tim, I'm not meaning about eggs. I'm meaning it's like a leather thing for ox, right? Is that right?
Yeah.
All right. But take my yoke and put it on you and learn from me, because I am gentle and humble in spirit, and you will find rest. The yoke I will give you is easy, and the load I will put on you is light. All right, so when I read that scripture from Matthew, what comes to mind?
Well, there are so many things and so many different ways you can unpack that passage. In the King James Version, which is the old proper English, he says, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, I will give you rest. Take my yoke on you and learn of me. I'm meek and lowly in heart." But if you go to the Message, which is a very modern translation, it says, "Learn to live with these rhythms of grace."
Yeah.
So it's about learning to live freely and lightly,
Yeah.
that I don't have to carry all of it anymore.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just, as you were talking about, the mentor that you have in your life, the mentors that I have in my life, the lessons that we learn from them, we don't have to experience.
Yeah.
If we can see it and understand it, we can avoid hitting those walls the same way that others have. So when Jesus says, "Come to me and I will teach you.
Yeah.
Come to me and learn from me."
Yeah.
I think it's a very important and very simple concept.
Yeah.
It's just hard for us because we don't see Jesus sitting in a chair with us.
Yeah.
We have to understand
It's
that in a different
relationship.
form.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I wasn't planning on talking to Catherine about Catherine so much, but like for instance, when we're talking about that freeing feeling, whenever I was I don't know, one of the times that I almost croaked, she was sad, but at the same time, like she had the strength to be with the kids, and she had the strength to, there was a peace.
Mm-hmm.
She told me that there was a peace, like God's got this, And so when I read that, my load is light, that's where, she's putting that heavy burden and putting it on Jesus, and, she's just trusted, and I think a lot of that comes through her posts and all that stuff. So when I think of, that, it's like, it means living freely from the world and being called to much bigger than yourself. And I think, me and Catherine's relationship has grown so much deeper.
Oh, yeah.
And our relationship with God has grown tremendously through all this. And so when I say bigger, yeah, that's what I mean by that. But he also, he doesn't want to, he wants to change you, but he doesn't want to change of who you are. Right. You know what I'm saying? And I think a lot of people think that, whenever you're in a relationship with Christ, it's like, oh, well, I got to read the Bible, 3 hours a day, and, I got to be judgmental and all this, and all this stuff. And it's like, no, it's like, it's not like that. Like for me, if anyone knows me, I'm not perfect in any way.
Right.
I'm still scratching my head of why God spared me. There's a lot that I am trying to figure out. But I think, but also hearing that, before that, he was talking to John the Baptist's disciples or whatever, and he constantly said, "Truly I say to you," and he says that throughout the whole Bible, And just his, like, I'm often struck by the honesty and boldness of Jesus. He wasn't one of that minces words together. For him, the truth was the truth. And it needed to be said even if it offended the powerful or well-connected. He was gentle with the broken and needy, but tough on the, hypocritical and judgmental. Even when he was awaiting trial with the high priest Herod, and, Jesus could have said, and he said this multiple times throughout his thing, is, who do you think I am? But with him, he said, no, I'm the Messiah, and for the Jews, that's like blasphemy. It's like, I can't believe he just said that, even though that they probably, most of this crowd's probably seen the miracles and were probably holding the palm branches, it's just crazy how people just switch like that. But through the whole gospel, Jesus not just taught what he was preaching, but he was also showing them, and you were talking about that, showing them what it means to follow him. What are some steps that we can make to learn more about Jesus?
Well, when you were talking about your wife and resting in having that peace, there were some things that came to mind, and I think they will mean something probably more deeply to you than they will anyone else, because you see it from a different perspective.
Yeah.
But for us as outsiders in that sphere, one of the things to answer your question is, as your kids get older, one of the things that they do is they rest in the fact that you're close. They rest in your presence.
Yeah.
Now, they were young enough that this experience that you went through may or may not resonate with them in the same manner as they age. But as they get to a point, they know you're there, and they don't worry about things going on because they rest in who you are and the fact that you're there. As they age and they hear your story and they see the post, they maybe hear the stories from people talking about Catherine and the way that she had that peace in being there. One of the things that they will do is they start to develop and grow in their own belief and their own faith. They're going to see something that was real. They're going to see something. To them, it may be a story that they don't recall all the details, but it will be something that they have that's tangible, that it was real. It was a lesson that was learned. So when we talk through some of these things, learning from experience isn't always the best, but it will stick the deepest.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes when we can be closer to God, we can be closer to Jesus in that sense of resting and trusting and believing, those deeper experiences are much safer.
Yeah.
And they stick longer. They mean something more.
Yeah.
So answering your question, I'm not sure exactly how
you answered it perfectly. All right. So with all that, we have students, that are trying to learn about Jesus and all that stuff. What do you think is preventing them to learning more about Jesus? Because for me, I think it could be the friends. It could be they've chosen the boyfriends, the girlfriends. Their idols. Whatever that is.
Skateboarder.
Yeah, skateboarding. What do you think?
I think those are good points. And one of the things that Jesus teaches the disciples is, I can tell you the lessons, I can show you the lessons, but it's your choice.
Yeah.
And the choices that they made, if you think about the choice that Peter made, Peter said, I will never deny you. I will never do any of these things. I will be with you to the end. He was bold enough that when they actually came to take Jesus, to crucify him, Peter whipped out his sword and started swinging.
Yeah.
And he cut off an ear.
Yeah.
There was a big crowd.
Yeah.
And these were trained soldiers. And he was bold enough to do that. But then just a few hours later, he said, I don't know him.
Yeah.
So the choices that we make at times, sometimes they seem easy and sometimes they're hard.
Yeah.
But the choices that Jesus gave them, we never see that he didn't allow them to make a choice. He would give them information. In fact, back to the feeding 5,000, they said, what are we going to feed them? He said, figure it out. And they said, well, we've got this little boy and his lunch. And he said, all right, we'll bring it here. It was pretty simple.
Yeah.
It wasn't, you have to do this. It was, what do you think?
Yeah.
There's some choices to be made. To go fully into the answer of your questions, if we go into Proverbs, I think it's very pointed, especially for students today. The choices that we make, whether it's the friends that we keep, whether it is actually following through and doing the things that should be done to progress, whether that's in our schoolwork or whether in our sports or athletics or whatever our extracurricular activities may be, to doing our best, giving our best, following through. But the one that I think probably would answer your question along with choices is whether they do it in the shadows or in the light.
Yeah.
Because if we do it in the shadows, everything has a shadow. And if we do it in the light, then everything is plain. Yeah. Everything can be seen. So the choices become easier.
Yeah.
So if I lean toward shadows, I think that it probably keeps me from having a relationship. It keeps me from seeing clearly. It keeps me from being honest.
Yeah.
So I think that would probably be one of the things that would lend itself the most to that.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. Yeah, you're so wise.
A few years of practice. And a teenage son.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm not that much older than him. But to get back to your point, and what I'm trying to get at is, a good practical way to prevent all that is to be in the vine. And what I mean by that is, John 1:15, and it's abiding, and it's more of, if you're not in the Word and if you're not pursuing Him, whenever you're done with this earth, what are you taking with you? You're not taking your car, you're not taking your athletic achievements, you're not taking your boyfriend or girlfriend. What you're taking is the relationship that you have with Christ. And so, with that, and when you're abiding in Him, it bears much fruit, good fruit. And all the bad fruit, He prunes it, right. And I think a lot of people think that whenever it's pruning something, it's like something bad, or it's, He's trying to take away something fun that, that I want to do. And it's like, no, He's pruning something to, make it good.
Right.
One thing, when I think of what is preventing us to learn about Jesus, I go back to John 15:1-5, which is abiding, that abiding relationship. It says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, He takes away, and every branch that bears fruit, He prunes it, that it may bear fruit. You are already clean because of the word which I have spoken to you. Abide in me, and I in you, as the branch cannot bear fruit of itself. That means of this world. Unless it abides in me, in the vine, so neither can you unless you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me, and I in him, he bears much fruit, for apart from me, you can do nothing. And I know that sounds like a Dr. Seuss, but if you really unpack that, what that means is spending time in the Word and just really focusing on what God wants to do for you. And he talks about pruning, and a lot of people take that as a bad thing, that, well, I don't want Him to prune me drinking on the weekends. Like, I don't want that. But in the long haul, I mean, we're old enough to know, like, those are a lot of bad decisions, and we got in a lot of trouble, I did, you know? I look back at it and I was like, why did I do that stuff? You know, like, you know, I was hurting myself. I was hurting my family. Like, there's a lot of stuff that I was doing, you know, but, you know, God pruned that out of me, and I'm thankful for that, you know? And when we think of the fruit that he produces, so he takes all the bad fruit and he takes it all away, and he takes all the good fruit, which is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, all of that. When you're in the Word, you have that. He gives you all that. And for me, you know, through this whole situation, like, at first, whenever I woke up, like, what happened? I'm super anxious. If I had to think of a disciple that I relate to most, it would be Thomas, because he worries a lot. I'm a huge worrier. Not a warrior, but like I worry a whole lot. And through that whole experience, like, there's one time where I called Kevin. So I was so high on drugs, and I had a trach on, so I couldn't speak. And I had no idea what the time was, but I knew he was connected with a lot of like doctors and all this stuff. And I was like, I need to get out of this COVID unit. Like, I need to get out. Like, I need someone that can help me. And I called him thinking that I could talk, and I go, and I was like, oh gosh, this isn't working. And I hung up the phone, and then I texted him, hey, is there a respiratory doctor that you know of, blah, 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 blah. But it took me like 30 minutes to do it because I had tremors. I'm like, and then like a few days later, I realized that I called him at 2:00 in the morning on a Sunday morning, like right before he was about to preach. And we talked about it too, and he's like, yeah, I kind of figured you were on a lot of drugs. He said, who was it? And he was like, yeah, it was Zach. And then Kevin goes, yeah, I think he was on a lot of drugs. I was like, yes, I was on a lot of drugs, and I couldn't talk, and anyways, it was miserable, and I'm glad I got out of that another time. But anyways, any final thoughts?
Well, one of the things that, in talking about being pruned, two things that come to mind, and you cover that really well. But one of the things that is in that passage that we often overlook is it's not just the bad stuff that's cut out.
Yeah.
One of the things that, to me, in modern day probably is the closest to understanding that is crepe myrtles. Mm-hmm. Crepe myrtles are those trees that really get tall, and they're really pretty trees. But at the end of the season, or early in the season, they're chopped down to just sticks, and you'll see them standing mm-hmm. up, especially around a lot of businesses because they can be such beautiful trees. They're cut down to just almost nothing.
Yeah. But
they grow without all of the encumbrance of not just bad, but even some of the good things that could have been beautiful. But what happens, it's more beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's even stronger. Yeah. It develops even more. The other that I thought of is, because nobody wants to hear this, but mowing the grass, you don't cut the grass because you just get mad at it and you want to cut it down. It is the fact that a yard that is out of control is unhealthy for the grass, yeah. for the soil. When you cut it down, it looks better. The appearance of it, the process and presentation of it, yeah. but it's healthier for the grass as well.
Yeah.
So when you can do this on a consistent basis, you understand that passage is not just about fixing us to be the way he wants us to be, but it is about taking things away that aren't always bad.
Yeah.
Because there's something better.
Yeah.
And when we can see, as we begin in this, we can see the lessons that are being taught. It makes a whole lot more sense than just having to feel it
yeah.
or to hear it.
Yeah.
And I think that's something, when we understand it and accept it, becomes a very powerful place for
yeah.
us.
And I think, back to finish my thought on worrying. I was worried a lot, but then, Catherine had to, hey, why don't you this is a good time to spend some time with the Word, since you're not really doing a whole lot right now. And man, I dig deep into it. And I tell you, the fruit, like, I started feeling more peace and like all this stuff. Even right now, I have this, one of my x-rays, and this happened about 3 weeks ago. I got a x-ray back, and it said that it had some long word, and it's basically just scarring in the lungs. That's what it is. And I was like, oh, that's a weird name. And I looked it up, and it said scarring in the lungs, and then it said life expectancy. I was like, okay, take 20, 50 years, and I clicked that, and it said 3 to 5 years.
Wow.
And I said, oh, all right. And it said chronic whatever, and I was like, that's not good.
Was it atelectasis?
I have no idea. I could show it to you, and you could probably understand it better than I can. But but that scared the mess out of me, and it what it says is that it starts to scar and starts to harden your lungs, and when it starts hardening your lungs, you can't breathe as much, and it can't get to your organs, and then all this stuff. And so, at first, I was very anxious and very stressed about it.
Oh yeah.
But then after me praying and all this stuff, made me feel the joys of the Spirit and all that stuff. But the time is cutting short, and I would love to dig deeper into that, but we will finish this off next week. I love you guys. Tim loves you too. Chris actually just came out of the bathroom, so we're gonna end it now. All right, so see you when I see you. Bye.